So, guess you just had an argument with the doctor. I just sobbed my guts up because I just had a doctor's appointment. I had a phone consultation. And the doctor just full on had a go at me. So, I had a doctor's appointment. The kids and I have been sick all week. And I rang yesterday and I said I didn't want to come in because I'm sick and I'm getting over it. And the kids are sick and they're getting over it. And I didn't want to take them out in the cold because it's winter and they've had asthma and they've been coughing. I want them to stay in the same environment, so they can get better, so my daughter can get back to school next week. Anyway, I've been saying it on this channel a little bit, and I think about having another baby if I can get my fibro into remission, and if I can get healthy and get fit. And I've been trying so hard to get my health under control, and I've been arguing with doctors because none of them would believe me. It took me 20 years to get a fibro diagnosis. After being prescribed painkillers all through my 20s, not one doctor ever sent me to a specialist for my scoliosis or a specialist for any of it. I got sent to a neurosurgeon or whatever you call it, neuro doctor, and they couldn't find anything, and that was the end of it. So anyway, I finally got diagnosed with fibro last year. So that's helped a lot by getting the medication for that. I'm still having a lot of back pain and back problems. And I think I had 4th degree tearing when I had my daughter. And sometimes I get pain down below. And I want to go get a scan to see if there's any damage, because if I do end up having another baby, I'm not saying I will, I'm just investigating it at the moment, that's something I need to be aware of, because if I have got 4th degree tearing, I might need to have a cesarean. I don't know. I just want to get all my information together so Ben and I can go and see the IVF doctor and make a plan and make an informed decision. So anyway, I rang the hospital yesterday and I asked them what I need to do. Okay. I need to calm down. What I need to do to get this information. And they said to me that I can either speak to the legal team and they can organise it for me and I can pay a fee, or the doctor could request it for me. And I said, well, what's the quickest way? What's the easiest way for me to get this information? And they went and had a look and they said, we actually have the information on file. So the quickest, easiest way for you would be to get this information is to ask the doctor to request it. So yesterday I didn't get my phone appointment because the power went down at the doctor's and stuff, and I was sick, and I said, look, can I have a phone appointment please? So the receptionist gave me a phone appointment. Anyway, the power went down, so they didn't ring, so he rang me today, and I asked for the scripts that I needed. He gave me my scripts, and then I said, look, I need you to do this for me. I need you to write to the hospital because I need this birth summary. I need to know what type of tearing I had. And he was like, no, and he was just like, no, he was really obstinate about it. He's like, why should I? And all this. And I was like, well, what's the problem? Like, what do you mean, why should you? And he's like, I'm not your doctor. And I'm like, well, you're the one who gave us the referral to the IVF clinic. What's the issue? And then he was like, called me a bully because I refused to take no for an answer. But the hospital said this is what to do. So I asked him for it, and he's like, I don't have to do that. It's your information. They should just hand it over. I said, it doesn't work like that. I said, you have to pay for it. I said, I'll pay for it. I said, but they told me the quickest, easiest way would be to get the doctor to request the information. And he's like, you're a bully. You always come in here and argue the point. And I'm like, and so what? I said, I'm not a bully. I said, I argue the point because I said, you have no idea what it's like to have fibromyalgia and not be able to get diagnosed because no one will listen to you. Have kids on the spectrum and not get diagnosed because no one will listen to you. This same doctor told me that my mother, there was no point reviving my mother if she died. And now she's friggin' going strong. He was happy just to let her die. This same doctor didn't give me antivirals last year when I was in hospital with the flu and thought I was going to die. You know, and I had to go to him about that. I said, I was so sick last year. I got put in hospital. I said, ended up on all these antibiotics. I said, I told you I needed medicine from the start and you wouldn't give me anything. And then I said to him, I said, last year, I said, I came in asking for a scan. Just got a text message. Last year, I came in asking a different doctor for a scan because I was in chronic pain. And I said, and basically got laughed out of the medical center. I said, then next minute, I get a cancer scare and I get told I got fibromyalgia. I said, so clearly I did need a scan. And, I'm just so upset. Like, I said, sometimes you have to advocate for yourself. Sometimes you have to stick up for yourself. I said, but he was just like, you know, how dare you? How dare you argue with me? And I wasn't even rude. I was just like saying to him, I just kept saying, this is what the hospital told me to do. This is the procedure. And he's like, no, it's not the procedure. I'm like, well, I said, what do you want me to do? And he's like, you ring up them and argue with them. I'm like, what's the difference whether I argue with them or argue with you? I'm still going to be arguing with somebody. I said, don't you realize how frustrating that is? Anyway, I'm just sitting here sobbing my guts up because I just can't believe he carried on like that. In the end, he said he would do it. And he's like, but there's no guarantee. And then he was going to write to the wrong hospital and all this. And he's looking for it on his file. And I said, I wasn't living here when I had my child. I was living somewhere else. I said, it's not on your system. That is the whole freaking problem. Anyway, so then when he couldn't find it on his system, he said he would do it. And then I rang up the hospital and I was bawling down the phone to the hospital. I'm like, look, I said, you guys told me to do this and the doctors carried on like a complete asshole about it. But this is what you told me to do. Anyway, and they just said, they were like, we're not going to comment because we don't know the situation, but yes, technically he could have done it. Well, yeah, technically he could have done it. And he's like, I just can't believe it. Like, this always happens to me. And that's why I'm crying so much, because it always happens. It always freaking happens to me, you know? And it's like, I've had to deal with autism, I've had to deal with ADHD, I've had to deal with fibromyalgia, I've had to deal with a mother being in 8 comas being told, just let her die by the doctors. And people wonder why I argue the point. If I had not argued the point, my mother wouldn't be here. If I had not argued the point, I wouldn't have got diagnosed with fibromyalgia. If I had not argued the point, my son would not have gotten the right medication and he'd still be screaming his head off. Like, people don't understand how hard it is to deal with an invisible illness, invisible chronic conditions, and you get treated. You go in, say you're in pain, you get given painkillers. You go back and ask for more painkillers and you get told you're an addict. Then you say, well, send me to a specialist, and then they say you just need antidepressants, you know, like, and then they wonder why you argue the point. I'm just so devastated. I have a female doctor, and I don't have any issues with her. She has been beautiful, she has been lovely, and she's listened to me. But every time I have to speak to a bloody male doctor, I get treated like dirt. And I just don't understand. I said, all you have to do is write an email to the hospital requesting this information. I said, I just need to know what type of tearing I had when I had my baby. And he's like, I'm not your doctor. I'm like, well, I said, my regular doctor's not here. I said, I can't get in to see her for over a month. And I said, the hospital said that I could just ask the doctor to email and it's not a big drama. I said, all you have to do is send an email requesting the information. And then he's like, I'm not going to see you again. I'm not going to see you again. I won't be seeing you again. And I'm like, but why? I said, I just want you to send an email and get this summary for me. And he called me a bully and told me I always argue the point and he won't be seeing me again. And I think that's so funny and rich because I haven't even hardly argued the point with this doctor. I've been kicked out of other doctors' offices because I've argued the point with them. Because guess what? Sometimes doctors don't get it right. Like years ago, my son had an ear infection and he needed antibiotics. And he was so sick, and he'd been sick for 2 weeks. He's only like 2 or 3 years old. And the doctor said, I'm not giving him antibiotics. I'll send you to a specialist. And I said, it's going to take months to get into a specialist. My son has been sick for 2 weeks. He's screaming. He's not sleeping at night. I said, he's in pain today. He needs antibiotics today. I said, give me the antibiotics and the specialist, referral. I'll go see the specialist, but he needs something today. And this guy got so angry with me, and he wrote the script out and then kicked me out of the office. And guess what? I went home, gave my son the antibiotics. Next day, he was starting to come good. Like he had a temperature for 2 weeks and everything. And like, what mother wouldn't do that? What mother wouldn't argue the point? Who wouldn't argue the point if the doctor says, I'm not going to revive your mother if she dies? There's no point in reviving her. Who wouldn't argue the point? You know what I mean? Who wouldn't argue the point when, like another time I went to the medical center and I told the doctor that I was in pain all the time, and he laughed at me and he kept touching me, and he just told me I need to think positive like his 80-year-old mother in Egypt. And then he wouldn't sign a form that I needed signed. And I just lost it because I'm like, why are you treating me this way? Why? I don't know. I know a lot of women have problems with male doctors and when it comes to chronic things. But I mean, it wasn't even like a chronic thing. Like, it wasn't even like the usual shit. It was just like, I just need a form, Anyway, I'm just devastated. I just feel so devastated. That's the only word I can say. I just don't even know what his problem was or why he called me a bully or anything, because I said to him, I said, all I'm doing is following what the hospital told me. The hospital told me to ring you and ask you to request it. That's what the hospital told me. I said, I'm only following what the hospital told me to do. And I said, and you're calling me a bully because I'm asking for this information and I'm going through the process the hospital told me to do. And he's just like, they should just hand it over. It's like, I don't know. I'm just so upset. Ben's home, so I'm gonna go and get a cuddle.